You're listening to Cherishing Scripture Podcast, a podcast that's changing society by cherishing Scripture.
Why do you need to carry an amulet around in your pocket that says WWJD to remind you what Jesus would do? Isn't that the Holy Spirit's job?
But it seems like a lot of men are trying to manufacture this difference as opposed to letting it naturally happen.
Exactly.
And the
Exactly
Bible,
right.
the Bible naturally changes people and makes them different.
In debates, when you get in a debate with someone, you know that you've won the debate when they turn personal.
Yeah, they're attacking these preachers that are standing for their liberty. And
Right.
when they can't find anything biblically wrong with this person, they start picking out other things.
Yeah. And if you don't think that those two things can overpower and overtake you, you're pretending.
Right.
And now here's your hosts, Pastor Brad Bailey, Adam Capps, Zach Taylor, and Jeremy Boggs.
Welcome back to another episode of Cherishing Scripture Podcast. Today on the A roll is me, Zachary Taylor, and then on the B roll, since I'm hosting it, right?
Yeah.
No, doesn't work that way. No, unfortunately,
you're still
it
B-roll,
doesn't.
man.
Still B-rolling it.
Yeah, you're still B-roll.
It's fine. But joining me today is, as usual, Pastor Brad Bailey, or as Adam likes to call, Bradford or Bradley, or I don't know what else you
Whatever
want to call it.
aggravates.
Bradenton.
My name is Brad.
Bradenton.
My name is
Bradenton.
B-R-A-D Brad. That's it.
He lives in the city of Bradopolis, right? Hey, Pastor, real quick before I introduce the other guys, how about your Braves, huh?
Man, in the series, brother.
I know.
What if this is the year that the Braves and the Bulldogs both go all the way?
Like almost like Champa Bay did, but with
Kinda. Yeah.
but with Atlanta sports.
Champ Atlanta.
Yeah.
We'll call it Champ Atlanta.
Technically isn't the Atlanta sport the Georgia Tech, right?
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. They'll never be there.
I don't know. You know,
Anyway.
I applied to go to Georgia Tech one time, but I couldn't get in because I didn't have enough pimples.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. And then also joining us is Mr. Adam Capps and Jeremy Boggs Jr., if you need to notate the junior.
I was confused
JBJ.
about that last episode. Like, why are we bringing that up?
So
You are a junior.
I am a junior.
This isn't news to you.
Hey, by the way, did you guys know me and my dad also have the same birthday?
Really?
Yep.
That's wild,
So we have the
man.
same last name and we have this full name.
I hope you have the
Same last name, but yeah, same
Holy
mom,
cow.
same daddy.
Straight up.
That must
Tax
be a
fraud.
nightmare. Yeah,
right
tax
there.
fraud,
That was-
identity theft, all kind of stuff.
Well, you know, our whole entire driver's license number is the same except for the birthday is. So you have two numbers that tell you the year you were born. So mine says 96. Dad says 74.
You could steal everything that your dad owns, man.
Yep.
And that's actually pretty simple to do.
Good
I won't
luck.
talk about it on air, but I personally know a case of someone that a son did that to their father, but we won't talk about that on air.
My dad would shoot me.
Right? Yeah, he probably would. But
I'd help him bury you.
anyway, today I was told to lead the podcast on something that I felt would be a good topic to talk about, and something that really, I guess, it can affect your personal life some. You can see it in the church some, and it really makes you stop and think. And the topic that just kept coming to mind for me, guys, was gossip. And talking about gossip, what it is, its effects on the church. So before we get started, really getting into some questions and getting y'all's opinion, the first opinion I want to get is what is your definition of gossip? So Pastor, we'll start with you. What do you think? What would you define as gossip?
Well, it's malicious.
Okay.
It's not just the sharing of news, but it's the embellishment of news or the exaggeration of news, or just flat out making something up that's just absolutely untrue about someone, so that you can gain an audience. That might be one of the returns you would get from it, or it could be just out of malicious, diabolic hatred for that person. So you're accusing them, or you're leaving a discussion open-ended. That Adam Capps. Can you believe it?
I can't.
And then you leave people hanging like that. As if.
Wait, what'd he do?
I still don't believe he doesn't prank his wife. I'm just saying.
I'll talk to you later about it, Jeremy. Okay. But
It has to
when
be
he's not
embellished.
here.
I've never done anything wrong.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Jeez.
okay.
Hail Mary. You need to do 3 Hail Marys, man.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we are Catholic according to some people, so that's all right.
Yeah, it's true.
Now,
That's true.
Adam, what would you define as gossip?
I'll be honest, I have a really hard time defining it. because my definition has to be super applicable to me specifically. And a lot of people like to define gossip as speaking in a way that you wouldn't in front of other people, the person you're particularly talking about. And I've never had that problem. I generally am capable of saying anything to anybody. And so I think that personally my definition of gossip has to be a little bit more strict, a little bit more severe. And it can't only be limited to untruths either, right? Because there's certain aspects of things that shouldn't be shared but are still nevertheless true.
Right.
So I don't have a very specific definition, but what I will say in a very general sense, saying stuff that shouldn't be said
Okay.
about people.
About people. Okay. And then Jeremy, what would you define as?
Man, I'm a mixture of both of these guys over here. I can't really define it. I mean, it could be, even if it's true, it's got to be still some kind of slander.
Okay.
So
you're saying you would group slander and gossip kind of into the same
oh yeah, for sure.
group. Okay, it's actually interesting that you mentioned something, Adam, and Pastor, you talked about it a little bit. There is a common thought that gossip is only when it's a lie. It's saying something that is not true about someone. Would you say that gossip is limited to just false accusations, I guess you could say? Or would you say that gossip can also include truth?
Yeah, I think it can include truth. I do, yes. Because there are certain occasions where, if you're in a court of law, they tell you they swear you in by saying you're to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so the truth is, of course, what they're seeking after, the whole truth, which means you're eliminating nothing. You're not leaving any detail out for advantage. Nothing but the truth means you're not adding to it. You're not embellishing it. And so, that testimony under oath is a binding testimony. And so truth can also become gossip when it is partial truth, or when it is in some way or another exaggerated, or it coincides with facial expression. Like we all used to have a buddy here that we used to just get so tickled by him, because every time he would tell you something, he was always shaking his head, always just shaking his head up and down.
Buddy's a very
trying to it's loosely used, but he was always trying to persuade you by saying,
Are we gossiping right now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Seriously.
So we're making sure we're talking about the same guy.
Yeah, but this this kind of thing is
If it makes you feel bad, I don't know who it is.
I don't know.
but there's a need for the truth to be told, but it has to be told in the right setting and to the right people. So, for example, I've had people that have come to me before in our church, and they have said, everybody's talking about this. Everybody is discussing this. Everybody's gossiping about this. This is kind of the scuttlebutt going around the church. And in most occasions, that should have been told to me first. If it had been told to me first, it wouldn't have been gossip, because you're telling it to the right person.
Right.
But if you're telling it to inferiors, or if you're telling it to to someone who's on a level footing with you, that's where sometimes it can cross the line and become an issue of gossip.
Okay. Adam, do you think it includes truth as well, or just false accusation?
Yeah. So in my definition, I addressed it. I definitely think that it can include truth. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And going on what Pastor was saying about how certain things can spread around the church, oftentimes when it does, and I'm pretty certain there's no churches that this doesn't happen to. I can't imagine that there is. If there is, then I'm sure they would never accept me as a member. But in those churches, there are few things that do more damage more quickly than that sort of gossip.
Exactly right.
So it's certainly something I'm glad you've decided to discuss, because it is of dire importance that it be discussed and understood in a biblical fashion.
Yeah. And then Jeremy?
Yeah, I think gossip does start. I think most gossip starts as truth, but then turns into a lie.
It's true too.
And like, it's like that game we used to play as kids. Like, I would whisper something in Adam's ear, and then Adam would say it over to Pastor, and Pastor would say it to you, and then you would go to the next person. So it started off as one thing, but then it turned into completely different, a whole different thing. Oh, Adam, man, he's an adulterer. Did you hear that? And now it turns out to he's this, he's also this, and he did this. So yeah, I think most gossip starts as true and then turns into lies.
Yeah. Even if you started saying something like, that brother Zach, that's not his natural hair color.
It's not. My natural hair color's red. I'm just
If
kidding.
someone said that, then all of a sudden it turns into, well, I wonder why he would do that.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's going through they may say that. Or
It naturally is going to turn into that.
Yeah, or they may say, I wonder if he's going through a midlife crisis, or I wonder if X, Y, or Z is true. And those are sometimes the planting of a seed is of that very, very toxic kind of a seed is just really necessary for gossip to begin and for gossip to grow and to turn into certain things. I've given this illustration before. There was a time here on North Parsons Avenue when I was pulled over by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, and it happened to be at the wrong time when several church members drove by and saw me beside the road, in my pickup truck and a one of those fancy Harley Davidson patrol cycles behind me, and so he pulled me over because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, but it turned into a lot more than that, It turns into things like, can you believe that? I mean, what kind of man of God would do something like that, or what kind of man of God would drive that fast? That wasn't the issue at all, And then it can start turning into, I saw him. He was outside of his truck doing field sobriety tests. I wonder what he was into, And it's just very very toxic when some people make a statement and then say, "Can you believe that?"
Yeah.
And our answer should be, "No, I don't. I wouldn't believe that about my pastor. I wouldn't believe that about Brother
I
Taylor."
think it's interesting that you mentioned that part, Pastor. And I wanted to I'll ask this one to you, Pastor. How should one be around someone who may have the propensity to gossip? How should you
That's a good question.
treat someone like that? Because at the end of the day, it is a church member. But where do you draw the line between, listening to them and trying to help them and
right? It
stopping the gossip?
depends on the gravity of the situation. It really depends on the gravity of the situation, because all talk is not gossip. There are some burdens that need to be communicated, and there are some issues that need to be confronted. And so if someone came to me and said, look, we have a man in our church who is cheating on his wife, I need to hear that. I need to hear that. Now, if this person is embellishing that story, or if they're doing this because that they're trying to make a villain out of this person, it can turn into gossip. But the Apostle Paul received conversations about church members. He received those conversations. The book of 1 Corinthians, he said, "Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me." So someone had written Paul and said, "Hey, did you know brother so-and-so is sleeping with his stepmother?" And Paul wrote back and said, "Now concerning that matter," he said, "that's worse than the Gentiles would do." But we would not have full chapters of our Bible if someone had not reported behavior to the Apostle Paul.
That's a very interesting
Correct.
And so
Now-
there's a common report, and the common report of the church is not gossip.
Right.
But when it is embellished and when there are details added that are not true, but also notice that common report, they did not disseminate that through the entire congregation. They went straight to the preacher. They went straight to the Apostle Paul and said, "Look, you're the one to handle this." And so,
and that's what I was about to ask is, I guess for you coming from a pastoral perspective, people coming to you with genuine concerns would be one thing, but how should a church member, so let's say Adam has someone who's coming up to him and trying to gossip, where do you distinguish as just a church member, where to listen and not to listen? Right.
Well, first of all, you want to, I think one of the big disadvantages that we have today is a lot of this is done digitally.
Right.
That's
If you want to talk to me, I need the advantage of eye-to-eye contact, because the eyes are the windows of the soul. And a lot of times you're able to read the character and the concern of a person if they're willing to do that. Yeah. I love those Joe Biden glasses, by the way.
Oh, come on now. Come on,
But,
man.
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
the rumor is going to start in charge. Adam
Yeah,
Capps
here
is
we
a
go.
Joe
He
Biden
voted
supporter.
for Joe Biden, right? But
He voted for Joe Biden.
I got to take
yeah.
that sticker off of my Land Cruiser now.
so the issue of the character of an individual, is this the same old behavior that this individual is doing all the time? I have church members that every week I hear something negative about someone, and so you are diminishing your credibility if you are constantly tracking down and talking about petty garbage junk that just is not the business of the church or just is not the business of the pastor, and it's just an effort to to drag someone's reputation through the mud, and if a person has that kind of character, they're not going to get my ear very long. If a person has that kind of character, normally they will betray themselves quite early. Someone who comes into our church and they're already in the first in the first 24 hours telling you everything about everybody in the church that they just left, I just look at my watch and mark the time, because I know sooner or later they'll be doing that about me too. This is just wisdom about gossip. If they're doing it about others, you're a fool if you don't think they're doing it about you too.
It's
and
true.
so
Right.
they've lost their credibility, they've lost their influence, and sadly that's all they live for is credibility and influence, but they've lost it.
It's true.
It's interesting. I do appreciate you saying that. Now, Adam, I'm going to ask you a question. In the Bible, it talks about a situation which most times has been applied to church discipline, going to a brother, and then if he will not hear you, bringing 2 or 3 with you as witnesses, and then if he will not hear you, bringing it before the church. Do you believe that model should also apply to gossip, that the person hearing things or concerned about things in a person's life should go to that person directly? Or do you believe that they should either go to the pastor or go to other church members about it first?
That's a really good question, Zach. Your questions have been on point today. So,
Wow.
first of all, I think that it's a case-by-case basis. It depends on the information that has been shared and its severity. The pastor mentioned that just not too long ago, that has a lot to do with how it's approached. Right. So if I'm putting myself in that situation, it depends. So again, the person that I'm receiving the information from, is this a person who chronically delivers false information, bad information, or information that shouldn't be shared? Well, that's going to go into how I address it with that person. Is this not a person that would normally do that? Why are they asking me? That's why they tell me. That's a really important one, because if I discern that the reason they're telling me is because they want to be heard and they want to have exclusive information, and me to be like, oh wow, well then I'm going to put a lot less value, truth into what they're saying, and then I'm going to say something along the lines of, cool, you know what? I'm going to go talk to him right now and see if that's the case.
Yeah.
And that will, generally speaking, shut every single gossip down instantly. Yeah. Almost every one of them, as soon as you say, yeah, I'm going to go discuss it with him real quick. Yeah. And then the question is, oh, well, where'd you hear that from? Well, I heard it from this joker over here. And then, it gets shut down very, very quickly that way. And honestly, it only takes one person in a church to do that, and gossip will reduce by over 50% almost instantaneously, just by being the constant threat of telling whoever it was.
Yeah,
So
I
yes.
did that today.
You did it today?
I did the very thing today. Somebody came to me after the service and made a negative comment about someone who wasn't here. And so just as soon as the service was over, I texted them and just said, hey, is this true? And that's, you're right. I mean, that's really, it's really the only way to just shut things down. Stop the talk, stop the rumor.
I think it's a fairly healthy way to shut it down too, because you don't have to tell this person, oh, you're lying or anything along those lines. You're just verifying it yourself, which you have every right to do with any bit of information you have.
Well, usually how they respond to you, say, well, let me go ask this person, typically will tell you if it's true or not true.
That's a really good point.
They'll say, oh, well, you don't need to do that. It's okay.
They're covering their tracks.
Or they'll say, or they're going to say, no, this didn't come from me. You didn't hear me say this.
Yeah.
Right. What you should have said is, I've got some really juicy, untrue gossip here, but you didn't hear it from me.
So they'll tell you if it's true, if they're telling you the truth. Or
most of the time.
Call it tea. That's what my friend calls it. He calls it tea.
Yeah. Now,
That's good.
Jeremy, you're known by us. You are, if you guys know the 4 biblical temperaments, Jeremy is by far a phlegmatic. He is a very loyal, loving person. He's a friend to people, and he sometimes he's talked about like some of the difficulties with that. And let me ask you, Jeremy, when someone comes to you and they bring something to you, maybe it's about someone that you care about or you know about, how do you personally, being a phlegmatic, how do you handle that? What I mean by that is, how do you go about, addressing the situation? Do you go to the person that is being discussed here, or do you shut it down as not true? How do you handle it personally?
No, typically I go to, if it's about the person I care about, I'll go right to that person. That's just something I've always done. I've had that happen actually too. Someone tried to do the same thing, Pastor. Someone did that about Pastor Bailey when I first started coming here, and I didn't catch it right away, but he was saying these things about the pastor, and then one day a friend of mine that I was trying to get to come to church was there, and that's when it went over the top. And immediately the next day I went and told Pastor Bailey, I said, hey, look, this is what was said.
Interesting, because I find sometimes the difficulty there to balance it, because you don't want to feel like you're trying to start drama, but at the same time, you feel like people that are being talked about should know what's being said about them. And I think it's funny that, Adam, you mentioned that 9 times out of 10, if I say something to someone, I tell them, hey, if they ask, tell them I said it.
You can be sure that person will never gossip to you again, too.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, if I say something and they're like, oh, could I go to the person? I'm like, certainly. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah,
tell them I said it, because when it's something that is true, I genuinely have no problem people knowing that I was the one that said it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And to be, to really get real with this, the Bible talks about the proliferation of gossip as if it is every individual struggles with this idea that we are talking people, we are listening people, and so on and so forth. But I mean, really, to be honest and to get real, I mean, we've all been going to church together for several years, and the fact is, every single one of you people have heard negative things about me, and the reverse is also true. I've heard negative things about every single one of you, all 3 of you guys.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's true.
I believe it about Jeremy and I, but not Adam.
Yeah,
come on. Be realistic.
I'm sad to have to tell you this, Adam, but it's but the thing about it is when things that are so outrageous and ridiculous are brought to my attention. Zach, you said just a minute ago, you sometimes you feel like you're obligated to go and tell that person, hey, you should know that this is being said about you. I agree with that on certain occasions, but there's some stuff that is said that is just so petty and so unbelievable and so patently false. I'm not going to bother you with that. I'm just not going to do it.
Sometimes even if it's untrue and you go to that person, I've seen that sometimes it can actually, have an effect on person.
It can. It does have an effect on that person.
I've been around Miss Shay long enough. I'll use her as an example. That sometimes when people say stuff about her, I don't necessarily feel the need to go and tell them.
No, please don't.
Because for her, it's going to hurt her so much more than me just addressing the lie as a gossip.
You know what? I mean, to talk about it biblically, there's a verse in, I think it's Philippians or Ephesians, one of the two, talking about letting no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people like to say, oh, well, that's bad words like, 4-letter words and such, but I don't think so. I think corrupt has a real sense of deception about it and destructiveness, the opposite of edifying, because that's what it says afterwards, something about
but to the edifying of the brethren.
Yes. Yeah. So it's almost the antithesis of edification. It's breaking down people. So if there's gossip that's deliberately meant to break somebody down, we'll call that corrupt communication. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the Bible says, don't let it proceed out of your mouth. So if it proceed out of somebody else, you certainly shouldn't take that to somebody, whoever they were talking about. You should just
kill it.
Eat it. Yeah. Just call it good.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I do see a downfall too, like you said, Pastor, because I do. That's what I do. That I go to that person afterwards and say, "Hey, man, is this true, or this is what was said?" And I have seen the downfall in that.
Yeah.
Because some people will react different than others do about it. And
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, Zach's
Jeremy
one of those
tells
people.
me, "Hey, I just want you to know
There's
I
some
handled
things-
it, but this
Yeah.
person said this," and I'm like, "All right, I'm
This is
confronting
what-
them tomorrow.
This is where I
Go
don't.
I'm
back
gonna
down.
knock them out."
There's some things that I don't tell Zach because he handles it different.
Yeah,
But-
and the thing about it is this is so prolific.
Yeah.
The sin of gossip is such a common sin, even in the body of the church, that if we try to track down everything, if we try to focus in and handle every single matter,
it's
we are going to be
impossible.
wasting enormous amounts of time that could be spent on other more productive things like winning the lost to Christ or studying the Scripture and so forth. And so I'm with Nehemiah on this. I'm not coming down off the wall. There's a work to be done here, and I'm not coming down off the wall to talk to you about some loudmouth.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
So
it's an addictive sin too, though.
that's
Yes,
what
it is.
that was one
That's
thing I
very
wanted
true.
to mention. We're running out of time, but one thing I've noticed about it is it is a very addicting thing to feel like you're in the know or you're finding out information about other people.
Knowledge is
but-
power.
Yeah,
Exclusive knowledge. is
and
even
it's
more
unfortunate because I've experienced it.
Right.
I've experienced it before. You'll have people that you've never really met, but they'll have a certain feeling about you just based on what they've heard about you, and
It's so true.
Yeah.
and it's funny.
One of the
because-
world's premier evangelists. I won't call his name here. He's never preached here. I will add that. But one of the world's premier evangelists. I was preaching in a meeting, and he was also there, and my name was brought up, Brad Bailey, and he said, "Which one is that? Is that Brad or Chad?" And the pastor was trying to explain. He said, "Is it the good one or the crazy one?" And he was referring to me as the crazy one, And so, when this fella brought that to my attention, he said, "That guy thinks you're crazy. He thinks you're a doctrinal pariah. He thinks you're a heretic." So here's what I did. Here's this premier evangelist, and by the way, evangelists are notorious for being gossips. Because they go from church to church to church, and they almost have immunity because they can do it every week with someone new, and it never,
You're
never
opening up a rabbit hole here, preacher.
Yeah, big time. So he asked me that, and he said, "You know what he's talking about?" And I said, "I have no idea what he's talking about, and I really don't care to know." Because in the end of the day, this evangelist's tongue is not going to affect Brandon Baptist Tabernacle.
Right.
It's just not going to.
That's right.
He is petty.
Nor should it.
Right. He is petty and insignificant, and he is just a freckle on the horizon when it comes to what I'm doing here at Brandon
If
Baptist
he wants to join as a
Tabernacle. So,
member, he can have a say.
different story altogether.
Yeah. So, well, this has been interesting, and I did enjoy this, guys. Getting y'all's opinion on the topic of gossip. Specifically, we more so talked about church members and that relation. I would like one day to revisit the topic, Pastor, and talk to you about because we know you've written the confession, and I believe when you talk about a misuse of authority pastorally, I believe that there's also they've misused the authority to spread gossip, and that kind of goes back to what Adam said. We won't get into the whole rabbit hole, but even if it's truth, sometimes pastors have said stuff about members, maybe things they went to them, and in a sense of weakness, trusting the pastor or evangelist or whatever the case may be. So,
Or have done it from pulpits.
yeah, or said
That's
it from
happened.
pulpits. Exactly. Yeah,
The
and
pulpit
the
has
list
turned
goes
into
on.
a gossip session in many cases. You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
So, but that'll definitely have to be for a different episode. I appreciate you guys. As a reminder, you guys can find all these podcasts on your normal podcast listening hosting sites. So I personally use iTunes. I know Mr. Caps is an anti-Apple guy. He believes you can slap an Apple logo on it and overcharge. So
You can. That's documented.
yeah, it's very true. So I use iTunes. He probably uses Google Podcasts or
YouTube exclusively.
YouTube exclusively.
I'm a huge
Interesting.
YouTube guy.
Actually, I will say now that the cameras have been in recently, I'm more to use YouTube. I do like to use iTunes. Only thing I don't like about YouTube, unless you pay for the subscription, is I have to leave my phone open to keep it running.
That is a
So-
little irritating.
And for me, a lot of times I'll have it in while I'm working. So
Hey, which, by the way, now that you mentioned YouTube, Spotify reached out to us about putting our videos on Spotify.
Outstanding.
Okay.
So that is a possibility coming soon.
Keep- keep up with that, guys. We'll keep y'all updated. As a reminder, you can always email us at info@brandonbaptisttabernacle.com. Once again, that's info@brandonbaptisttabernacle.com. If you go to brandonbaptisttabernacle.com, you can find tons of audio files, including some of Pastor's sermons. Those are also on YouTube as well. We're starting to get this media out there as efficiently as we can. But thank you guys for listening in. Remember, like, comment, and subscribe down below. Turn on the bell, as Jeremy always puts that nice little cue in the beginning. Turn on the bell so you can be notified whenever we post a video. We try to post almost daily. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will catch you guys in the next one.